Hello and welcome to Card Shop Insiders, a podcast where we combine decades of experience from both sides of the counter to take you inside the business of local game stores and collectible gaming hobbies. I'm Noah, and I play games, lots of them.
Hi, I'm John. I'm a card shop owner and veteran of the industry. Noah, let me explain something to you before you go any further. I had one of my regular customers come in who's been listening to the podcast, and he said verbatim, pretty much the intro into our episodes. He said, "Why don't you just change it? Just ad lib it." So I think the next time we're going to ad lib it. Let it rip.
See, I don't agree with that. I think you're supposed to have an intro that's the same
All the
consistently.
time?
Yes, I think most podcasts that I listen to have a consistent intro and then they start their podcast. My goal would be to record that intro as an independent audio piece, and then we don't have to say it every time we start.
That's good. All right, let's go now.
All right, John, how are we doing this week?
Not too bad, Noah. How about you? Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah, everything's been really good. We had a lot of fun. Got to get into the new Lorcana set this weekend. I guess we could start there with news and updates, huh?
Yeah, I mean, that's great. It was released on Friday, and we did our event, which was a sealed event using the starters and the packs that came in with the box and one that they got extra. And we had 19 players sign up, which is good. Sign up for our weekly league play. It runs for 3 4 week periods. And after each 4 week period, you get promos as associated with how many points you get and so forth and so on. I'm not going to get into that because that's boring stuff, but it is what it is, and that's what we're doing. So it was good. This coming weekend, we're going to be slow because I know 6 of our regular league attendees will travel to Atlanta for the Lorcana North American Challenge. It's the inaugural challenge event for the Lorcana trading card game, launched less than a year ago. You got more to say about this, I'm sure.
Well, it is exciting that the challenge events are starting. They're going to have the two scheduled in the US right now. We've talked about before are Atlanta this week and Chicago in a couple of weeks. They've got Lille and France also going this weekend, I think. I think it's a big deal. I think it's really exciting, and I think it's a good opportunity.
Do you know if they sold out, if they're at capacity?
When I checked on Saturday while we were talking about it in the shop, they were still a couple hundred under capacity on Melee. But we were talking with a couple of guys, and we think it's just people that haven't bothered to log into Melee yet. I'm sure it'll be full.
Probably.
I mean, there's a waiting list.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
It's definitely gonna be slow this weekend for me. I know that, and I've anticipated that. But last weekend, I pretty much sold out of everything that I had. I think I have 1 trove left of the 8 that I did receive. All the booster boxes that I did receive are gone. I have 2 packs left, and I was able to pick up 12 more this morning from my distributor, but actually I banked them, so he is gonna ship them out today, so I'll have them on probably on Wednesday. So that should serve my needs for the next couple of weeks at least.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, the other thing is there's this new product, the Illuminers Quest, that came out with it. We got to play that at my house this weekend. It was a lot of fun. I think it presents a lot of cool design and opportunities for the game. And I think it's going to really expand the player base of people that are interested in playing the game instead of just collecting.
Explain what it actually is.
It's like what we would call like a PvE, player versus environment game mode. So there's a fixed deck of cards that are played by the character Ursula, and then players play together and cooperatively against that to try to win the game. And there's a set of rules about how you win the game and how the interactions work, and there's a set of rules about how to play out the cards from the Ursula deck. It's a lot of fun. We played a 4-player game against it with my kids and my wife and got absolutely dominated, but it was still a bunch of fun.
So it is a 4-player game or up to 4-player game?
Yeah, it's 2 to 4 players. I think you can play it with 1 player too, but I do a lot of solo games, and that could be fun as well, but it's just a different spin on playing with other people instead of trying to go head to head, working together, talking through decisions, and then trying to beat the puzzle that comes out of this Ursula deck is really fun.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. All right, let's hit Star Wars next. Star Wars participation this past weekend was a little bit disappointing. Yeah, I mean, I only had a couple people come in on Saturday. I think I had one person show up on Sunday. However, there was an event that was run at one of the other local stores, and they did a regular Star Wars tournament. However, they didn't have any prizes to give out. And what they did was they charged people, participation, and they gave out store credit. But I know people like to have prizes sitting in their hands. But I still have 6 boxes myself, and I squirreled them away. And from what I understand, there's not going to be a reprint of Spark of Rebellion until the holidays. Now, that could be anywhere between Halloween and Christmas or New Year's. So I'm gonna squirrel away whatever I have. I know the boxes are selling for, 240 bucks online or more, but again, people that come into the store, and I keep repeating this, I think they have a right to have priority to my product, and people who play in the events that I do weekly, and I'm gonna continue to do that until at least the next set comes out, which is gonna be sometime in July. I think it's July 12th, and it's called Shadows of the Galaxy. And there's also the third expansion coming out sometime in November called Twilight of the Republic. So they're running into supply issues just like Lorcana did when Lorcana first came out. Lorcana finally got their supply issues pretty stabilized, and I'm sure Star Wars is going to do the same thing.
Yeah, my understanding, I listened to FFG Live a couple weeks ago where they talked about product updates, and they talked about the fact that they'd printed more than anything that they've ever printed as a gaming company before. And so they've sold through all that, and they're getting more stuff printed, and they're bringing it in, and they're changing what their printing schedule will be for the future sets. So,
I'm hoping GameGenix gets their act together because their deck boxes and counters and sleeves and everything that they made at the beginning, that there hasn't been another supply coming out. So I know it takes time to get it back on the track, for all the supplies, but supplies are still highly in demand, especially those counters that they came out with.
well, and you've also talked before on the show about how one of the things that really does well for the store is supplies and accessories for games. And it's just really disappointing to not be able to get a really cool premium product like that in enough quantity that you can be able to sell it in a local store.
Oh, I agree. I mean, that's a thorn in my side. Every time somebody comes in and says, "Can you get one of these? Can you get one of those?" I said, "No, they're all sold out. Nothing I can do."
Well, particularly because I think I can buy it off of the GameGenic website will redirect me to retailers that have it available, which I think is disappointing that it is somewhere. It's just not here.
All right. Anything else on Star Wars updates for the week?
I don't think so. I think people are really getting excited. The spoilers are rolling out. They've done some good stuff with the social media to get out information about that new set, and I think it's really exciting to be looking forward to a new set. And before we get there, we've got the store showdown, and that'll be fun. But let's talk about Magic. There's a couple of big things coming up, and that have just happened. I know on Saturday we saw in the store there were some people playing the Baldur's Gate event.
Yeah, we only had four people playing it, but it went pretty well. It wasn't something that everybody wants to play, and essentially what it was, you get 3 packs of the Baldur's Gate. You draft it, plus you get a free collector's pack that came with it. You open up the collector's pack, you don't draft that, and you open up each one of the other packs and draft it 2 cards at a time, and you play in a casual environment. It was fun. Everybody had a good time that came in to play it. I did actually have a couple more people that came in, I guess, after you left and sat down to play. So basically, I had 8, which was great. Which was great.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think events like that are really cool, and I think that they tailor themselves to different segments of the gaming community. And so Magic's doing a really good job of spreading themselves out over a couple of different genres and trying to keep people interested in their product. So speaking of new product, I had
Hold on, let me stop you for a second, Noah. Speaking of product, the problem is they're coming out with all these events. Each genre is coming out with their own event, doing this, store championships, these showdowns, and this and that. And it becomes a scheduling nightmare for a store, especially a small store that's limited in space, limited in geographical participation, because I don't have a huge player base like some stores do. And they request you to do this, they want you to do that, and they want you to do that. It gets very difficult to schedule it where you're not stepping on toes for other games. And that's my only problem with all these events that they got going on. And Magic seems like they have a whole bunch of events that they want you to do each month. And it gets confusing. It gets very difficult to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the competition for the customer. I think the companies that are producing the games are competing to get the attention of people that are playing in the game space, and they want to take as much attention into their game as possible. I don't fault them for that, but I do think you're right. It does make the job of the LGS difficult in terms of layering and scheduling, particularly when you have players that play multiple games.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. Magic, you mentioned Modern Horizons 3. That's due out on June 7th. That's the first pre-release we're going to do for that. We're going to do in this particular store, we're going to do one on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's expensive though. Modern Horizons 3, the price point is way up there. And I don't know. I mean, a lot of players are complaining, hey, it's too expensive. I'll give you, for instance, they come out with, I don't know, like seven different SKUs, one of them being collector edition commander sets, four decks. And right now they're selling online for like $170 a deck. And it's kind of ridiculous. I don't know. I mean, I've had some people that complain and some people say, hey, put me down. However, the problem is the allocations. I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to be able to get maybe two sets of it. I may be allocated only one. I don't know. It's exasperating. And
Yep.
again, regarding allocations, I know we spoke about it once before, and this is going to be a topic of probably next week or the week after this podcast, allocations and the metric system for Wizards, because I've had people ask me, what the hell are metrics? How are you being measured? And it's just another name for big brothers watching. So, I mean, that's really what it boils down to. Other companies are doing the same thing. So, every company has their metrics that determine what kind of price support an individual store is going to get. So that'll be explained in the next episode or two.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think it's something that we can delve into talking more about is how this different companies are measuring things and why it's important as a player maybe to understand how that is so that maybe you can prioritize supporting your store in the best way possible. Speaking of other cool intellectual properties that are coming up, Magic's Summer Set's going to come out at the end of the summer with Loomborough. That's going to be pretty cool. It's got like mythical animals with powers and things. It sounds like every other fantasy thing in the world, but it's pretty cool.
I've had people ask about that already. It's not even in my order queue. So I just look at them, kind of dumbfounded. I know it's coming out. How much is it going to be? I said, I don't have a clue because it's not even in the order queue yet. But they're impatient. They want it. They want this. They want that.
Everybody wants it now. Going back to the cost of these commander decks, though, with the Modern Horizons 3 Collector's Special Edition commander decks, I think, yes, it sounds like a big number for you as a store owner that's selling these sealed products and you're used to the decks coming out in the $50 to $70 range. And now they're jumping up to almost $200 a deck on this particular product. But if you think about what the guys are playing when they come into the store to play Commander on a weekly basis, those guys are putting $500, $600, $700 worth of cards on the table for their single deck. And so these Commander precons have been getting better in terms of quality, and that's also going to translate into an increased cost.
But, again, Noah, we're talking about the premium collector packs or collector boxes versus the regular collector boxes. Some people, yeah, they want all the shiny ones and they want this and they want that. And as a small business, my outlay is going to be about $8,000 next week, the end of next week, because that's when I'll have to pay for it. Again, I don't have credit with these companies. I don't want to do it. I don't put it on my credit or I put it on my debit card. And that's $8,000 that's going to go on my debit card. It's going to be covered in the next day or two. I'm not concerned about that. But getting started, a newer store, they may not be able to come up with that kind of money. And in speaking to my sales rep sometimes, he said, I have extra product of XYZ. Well, how come you have extra product? I thought it was, in high demand. Well, it is, but such and such cannot take it. They cannot afford it, or they're on credit hold. So they can't get the product. So we have, 100 cases that we need to get rid of because they're on credit hold. We can't ship it to them. And that happens. That happens a lot. Be surprised.
Yeah, well, we'll talk more about acquiring product and things in a couple of minutes. I think as part of our main topic. Let's go ahead and wrap up the news with a little bit of fun about the podcast.
No, no, hold on one second. I'm going to stop you again. Rarities 2, Yu-Gi-Oh! Rarities 2 is coming out this week. As an OTS store, I can ship or I can sell it effective Wednesday night. And you remember Rarities 1 because you were in here that day. I sold out pretty much that Wednesday or Friday night.
It's 35 minutes.
Yeah, it was crazy. So it is coming out this week. And it's a premium product. It's $10 a pack, but people are asking for it already because it has a lot of good reprints of cards from God knows how long ago that are currently selling for 30 or $40. And if you pick up this pack and you get this card in there, it's $10 versus having to buy it for $40. So that's why people are excited about it. Now I'll let you go. Go ahead.
The next topic is still you. So we can jump on and talk, though. We wanted to give a little bit of an update about some progress for the podcast. We did get our first Patreon subscriber. I wanted to give a special thank you to Ben for being our first Patreon subscriber and also coming in to spend some time with us in the shop and give his direct feedback and input and suggestions for the podcast. We really appreciate it and look forward to being able to expand the value and options that come to our patrons and listeners through that avenue.
Yeah, we've been getting a lot of favorable comments and suggestions of how to do this and how to do that. One of the guys said they heard our cell phones in the first four episodes. I said, "Well, we're real. We're getting it. We're getting our act together. Just give us time." And we've gotten some good, favorable feedback, and we appreciate that. And again, thanks to Ben. I appreciate it. But anybody that's listening out there, send money. We need money.
We take it in all kinds of forms. All right, John. Well, why don't we wrap up the news there and let's go ahead and jump over to talk about our main topic today inside of the card shop business. And I think we wanted to spend some time talking about product acquisition, but especially how you came to have such a large singles inventory. You've talked to us before about your robust inventory of Magic singles, and I know you've had other games that you've stocked tens of thousands of cards for before. So why don't you give us a little bit of background about how you went from selling Beanie Babies to stocking tens of thousands of cardboard cards in the shop?
Well, I told you once before, it was all because of this one kid. His name was Jake. Came in one day and said, "Can you buy Pokemon cards, or can you get Pokemon cards?" And again, in my Nicky Newark vernacular, I said, "What the are Pokemon cards?" And he looked at me and he said, "This is it." And I said, "All right." So that's how I got started in the card business. And then as they evolved, people would come in and say, "I have collections of Magic," and I would look at them and say, "All right. I don't really know what the individual Magic cards were selling for at the time. It was before the internet became prolific and everybody can get on TCG Player and so forth and so on. So they'd come in with a box of cards and I'd say, "How much you want for them?" And they said, "Well, I want $100." And I said, "Well, look, I'm not going through every damn card in here. I'm going to give you 75. If that's what you'll take, fine." So I'd buy a whole box of cards for 75 bucks. Some of them were lands in there, which I found out were worthless, but I needed them for inventory. But there were some good cards in there. And I kept getting more and more people coming in to do that type of thing. Just they wanted to dump their cards or they got them at a flea market, they got them at a yard sale, they found their Uncle Louie's collection in the attic and they just wanted to get rid of them. Some of the cards I wouldn't buy because they were damaged. They were moisture ridden. They were smoke. You could smell smoke, and people just don't buy cards that smell smoky. I could smell them as soon as they came in the door, and I wouldn't buy them. But that's how I acquired my Magic collection and Yu-Gi-Oh collection at the time. I probably have roughly 150,000 cards that are still not in inventory, Magic cards, and eventually I'll get around to that. I'll probably be sitting in a nursing home someday with a box in front of me, putting them in, drooling my cereal down my face, putting them into inventory. But yeah, that's how I acquired it. And now it's a little bit more sophisticated. Somebody will come in and I'll start a buy list. And it just depends upon the popularity of the card. Or if I have them in stock, somebody will say, "How much you give me for this?" And I'll, again, through the database and the POS system that I use in Crystal Commerce, I get into that and I price them and I come up with a buy list. And I don't buy them for cash anymore. It's store credit. And a couple of reasons. That store credit keeps people buying them in the store. They'll come in and they'll say, "Hey, I got $50 store credit. I'm going to buy it from your store." So it keeps the money in your store. And it also keeps out people who steal from other people or who have fake cards that come in and try to sell stuff. And, they want quick cash for this. And unbeknownst to them, our local community does communicate with each other as far as the stores. I'll call up Denise in Burlington and talk to her every once in a while. I'll talk to Janetta down in Wilson at Dream Days, and you know we share information. We share good vendors, not such good vendors, good sales reps, and so forth and so on. But we'll also share those people that we think have been trying to peddle fake cards. And it was one guy in particular who came from Miami and he came up here to live up here. And that's what he did. He tried to, peddle fake cards to players, all the stores around here and so forth and so on. Eventually, he was caught. And, came in here one day. I looked at him. I laughed. I said, "No, I'm not buying your stuff. Would you give me store credit? I'm not going to give you anything." I said, "I don't want it because I know they're fake." Well, how do you know they're fake? I said, "I just know." And he just got all kinds of shades of red in the face, and he left. So that's it.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting discussion to have and to talk about is, you're not really a professionally trained counterfeit expert, but the market for these cards has driven a black market, if you will, of people that are willing to produce, and technology's advanced now so that it's pretty easy to produce high quality knockoff cards in somebody's garage. And that's very invasive. My understanding is a lot of stores are having trouble purchasing singles from players because they can't trust the source of the cards. If you're not getting stuff validated or you're not able to have some sort of a quality guarantee, people aren't wanting to exchange.
Well, I think the card companies themselves, like Wizards of the Coast, they came out with that little symbol down at the bottom, that reflective holographic symbol, and that's hard to reproduce. But again, they get them printed in China, and I've seen cards coming from China. However, if you take the card itself, the card stock is made of three plies. There's a core set or a core part in the middle, and then there's two paper parts on each, one on each side. And if you rip that card, take any non-discriminate card and just it's worth a penny, and rip it open, you'll see those three. And if you flick the card, it'll snap back. The fakes, unless they've gotten much better, will kind of not make that noise, won't make that flipping noise.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they're doing a lot more foiling of cards and making it harder for people to recreate the foils and the oil raised foils and everything else they're trying to do to keep the integrity of the card, the way it is.
Yeah, certainly. I think that there's a lot of work that's been done by the companies to cut back on counterfeiting and to make the cards hard to duplicate. I think the hard thing is some of those methods that you and I might be familiar with to check cards can really affect and damage the card if it's done improperly to a legitimate card. You don't want to tear a card in half to check it because you can't play it anymore. But the other thing is with the Commander product and with these legacy formats that people are playing in, they're still playing with cards that are pre holographics. So even though they're putting the little symbols on the bottom and even though they're putting these new things in for the modern sets, the cards that came out 10, 20 years ago for these games are still really subject to counterfeit, which is making it hard for those cards to go through the secondary market.
True. That's true. Yeah, you're looking at my list here. I got rid of 72,000 bulk Yu-Gi-Oh cards a couple of years ago because I just didn't have the space. I didn't have the resources. I didn't have the time to put them into the database. I do have some singles with Yu-Gi-Oh. As a store owner, you can't excel in every single area. I have people come in and say, "Hey, do you have a singles inventory?" I do of a certain card or genre of cards, but I don't have a lot. I have more Magic than any other card. I have an inventory of Lorcana cards, of Star Wars cards. I don't have Pokemon anymore because there's so many cards to put into the database. As a small store owner, I don't have the resources to do that. And we talked about selling online. No, I'm not going to sell them online. People come into the store and they look at them and they buy them. So that's why I don't have that huge inventory like somebody that would sell on TCG does.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a consideration for folks that want to open a store is what products do you carry in terms of singles? How do you manage and maintain that inventory? How do you accrue it? But really, it comes down to time and money and space. Those are the three limiting factors that you've repeatedly talked to us about. Storage space takes up a lot, and then also being able to manage a singles inventory takes a lot of time.
Well, you have to be able to excel in one or two areas too. You don't want, I mean, if you try to do too much, you're going to get burned out, number one. And you're not going to be good at what you display or what you have. You're going to just become a run of the mill card shop. I've had a lot of people come in and say, "Hey, you got a great inventory of old Magic cards." And I said, "Yeah." I said, I mean, compared to the surrounding community, I do. And they'll come in here and they'll buy a couple of cards here and there, and it's sufficient for my needs, and it's good to hear that I have the best inventory of older Magic cards.
Well, I'd kind of expect that too in this area. You're the longest running shop in the area by a good amount.
Are you saying I'm old?
I mean, I wasn't going to say you're old, but the shop's old.
Well, hell, the shop started with me, so I'm old then too.
You age with the shop.
I guess I'm aging. Yeah, that's for damn sure.
But your shop's been receiving product direct from Wizards for a long time. And in addition to the other ways that you accrue cards, getting the product and having sold it in the first place is how these other stores are accruing their stuff. The newer stores are buying and opening packs. You've got stuff that you've had for a decade that they never had a chance to sell because they weren't a store.
That's true. That is true. So my investment way back when is paying dividends now. Most of the time, the cards had gone up in value too. Again, before the database situation, I'd have books of, you know, 50-cent cards, dollar cards, and so forth and so on. I can kick myself in the ass right now for doing it that way, but that's all we had back then. Now it's a little bit more sophisticated. And some of the cards I have back in inventory that are still sitting there waiting to be sorted, could be worth a little bit of money. Most of the good cards have been sorted out of there. So, but there's a couple of gems I'm sure that still are in there.
I'm sure there are. I think the other thing to consider as a seller of cards when you're starting up a business like this is to think about what cost goes into acquisition. And realistically, like the cost of individual cards is very low on the bulk scale, right? If you're getting cards at the price of 3 or 5 cents a piece, you don't have to get 1,000 hits to make back your money.
That's true. That's true.
But if you're buying individual cards, like somebody walks in with 3 Magic cards and they're like, "Hey, I want to know if you'll buy these cards." I mean, I think then you're looking at a situation where you're trying to make sure that you're actually going to get a hit because you can't give somebody, even with store credit, you can't give somebody $20 worth of store credit and then have the card bottom out and you only get $5 back for it.
Well, that happens on occasion, and that's why I don't buy cards on pre-release weekend. If somebody opens up a card and they say, "Hey, did you get on TCG Player?" and they say, "Oh, this card is selling for $60." That's because it's the first day that this card has actually been out. Next week, it could be selling for $20. So I say, "No, I'm sorry, but I'm not buying it right now." Well, how come? And I explained it to them why I'm not doing this. And even personally, I used to rip open packs and a couple of boxes and put them into inventory. I don't do that anymore. I may open up maybe one box, a couple of pre-release kits that I might have left over. I use those packs and open them up. Plus, I get the promo cards out of there. And sometimes promo cards are pretty decent in the pre-release packs. So I found out that, yeah, if somebody comes in with a whole bunch of old cards that are in good shape, again, not water damaged or smoke filled, I'll probably buy them. But if somebody comes in with a whole bunch of new cards, a whole bunch, I'm talking about a box or full, I'm not going to do that because there's so much competition right now for the newer cards that it's everybody who's just getting into the business are buying. You're better off buying older cards. If,
Well, I think those are also more likely to have value, but a couple of noted exceptions might be the current sets of like Star Wars,
sure.
that's coming out. It's you've already alluded to the fact that it's going to be out of print and then there might be a reprint for the holidays later this year, but with the limited availability that there's been, like those cards are people acquiring now might be worth it.
Sure. All right. What else is next on our agenda here, Noah?
Well, let's talk into our 3 E's real quick. You made a note that you wanted to talk about passwords. What you got on passwords today, John?
I found out something very interesting. Let me get my notes here. Naturally, passwords are everywhere these days, email accounts, bank accounts, social media. And I read that a typical person has about 100 passwords, that they have to use, and it's become unmanageable. And I was reading this, the more I'm reading about this, it's kind of sad. Solving the password conundrum. I can't remember all the passwords I need for websites. And this article gives a little bit of synopsis of what you can do to help keep up with it. But it was interesting. There were in 2023, there were 3,205 reported data compromises in which hackers break into the data files of a company or organization and steal consumer information. That was a 74% increase over 2022. And that's significant, and it's multiplying. You got all these pimply faced kids that are sitting on the internet that are trying to break into your accounts to hack it. And getting back to passwords itself, this one company said your password should contain 14 to 16 characters or more. All right, again, I'm going to look at this, and I'll give you for instance, when you put password in, it'll say weak or very weak or so forth and so on. And with the algorithm rhythms that these people have they're crooks. That's all you can call them. They're crooks. If you have a password that only has 5 characters in it, that's considered very weak and time to crack seconds to minutes, and then it keeps going up. Weak would be anywhere between 8 and 9 characters. Good is anywhere between 11 and 13 characters. And that time to crack that is months to years. However, this recommendation about password length is 14 to 16 plus, and that's strong. And the time to crack is centuries. It would take the algorithm centuries to get into your passwords. And you shouldn't use the same password on multiple sites. Each site should have their own particular password. And that makes sense. And I know a lot of times you're limited to the number of characters you could put on a password. But I would recommend after reading this is going through all your passwords, and I'm going to do the same thing, and putting the maximum number I could possibly get at. Now, remembering the passwords, that's where it's a pain in the ass. Excuse my French, but it is. And they had 3 recommendations in this article about the password conundrum. Keep a notebook, write it down, keep it in a safe place. I have a little notebook that I keep in the safe that have my passwords in it. Or they say if you don't have a safe, use something at home. Put it in a book. Put a page and put it in the book or something like that. Or use a password manager or use a pass key. And I know a lot of companies are doing that. So that's something I'm going to be looking at very carefully in the near future.
It's an interesting topic. I use a password manager myself. I found it several years ago. I read an article in one of the digital consumer magazines that I was interested in and paying attention to at the time, and they talked about this similar idea about length of password and not duplicating passwords and using like auto-generated passwords. The hard thing with that is you don't remember it. If you've got an auto-generated password that's got, 27 letters, characters, and numbers all mixed up, how are you supposed to remember that?
Yeah.
And
And
so
they were also recommending don't a lot of people use 1, 2, 3, 4, which is crazy. But a lot of people use their names and their birthday and their wife's names and the name of their dog or the kind of car they get. No, it's not going to work. And in the past, I guess I've been doing the same thing, but I'm changing that now. And it's especially important in business because you're going to have more passwords. You're going to have accounts that you need to get into. And it's a pain in the neck to keep track of all these things.
Well, that's what I was about to wrap back into was for somebody that might be opening a shop. Yeah, we've all got personal passwords and things that we need this information for. But when you open up your own business, you're going to have banking passwords, you're going to have social media passwords, you're going to have seller account passwords, you're going to have accounts with all of these different manufacturers for your OP accounts. And being able to remember and keep all those passwords straight is really important because not being able to access that stuff on the computer or the internet is becoming less practical. You've got to be able to connect to the internet. You've got to be connected with these other stores, with these other vendors, and that's how you're going to do a lot of stuff. I mean, I know you've talked about it several times, even today. You go on the computer to manage your inventory and what's coming into the store. You use the computer to manage your inventory inside of the store. And so password management is something that's really important. And I think definitely there's a lot of new innovation. One of the things that's been recommended to me by an IT professional is that you use phrases with punctuation. So whole sentences with punctuation, like "I really like to play golf!" exclamation point, or "My mom drives a Mercedes Benz, comma, no, not really, exclamation point."
No, that sounds legit. Legit, as long as you can have access. So, because that's going to be hard. I mean, you can't use them on every single thing that you're doing because once they break into, if they can break into it, they got access to everything, and that's what you're trying to prevent. So, you're going to have to come up with 100 different phrases, Noah, or keep them in a notebook, or as you said, use a password manager.
We could just go back through our podcast transcripts, which will be available soon on our Patreon account for you to review. And you could just take your favorite sentences from the podcast and turn them into passcodes.
That's true. That's just true. All right, Noah. What else we got? I'm going to educate you. Okay.
Do it.
All right. I know I hammered you last week about your favorite word, which you didn't use today. Okay.
It's hard for you to say it's my favorite if I haven't used it
Well,
in
you've
two episodes.
used it 4 times in one episode. We're going to segue into this, and that means transition into this. So I picked the word of the day. For some reason, I don't know what the hell I get on emails. It comes word guru, and it comes up with a word. I'm going to let you handle this. Uh, let you handle that one. Go ahead, Noah.
All right, puissance is a power, might, or force, especially when exerted by a person or a group.
Spell it.
Puissance.
That could be a vulgar word if you think about it.
It sounds like some sort of excrement, but according to this, common usages would be the king's army was known for its puissance on the battlefield, or the company's economic puissance allowed it to dominate the market.
We're going to have to get into that one day. We're going to have to use it in the podcast. You said something about, God, what the hell you just said about different words that and how they mean different things. Of course, I'm trying to be funny today, but when you ask somebody if they're ready, they're going to say yes. Does a bear defecate in a sylvan environment? How's that grab you? All right.
That's a fitting answer.
I mean, yeah, but what does it mean? Typical, it means does a bear sit in the woods? That's what it means.
I'm aware.
But, can you imagine going up to somebody, "Are you ready?" And they're instead of saying, "Does a bear shit in the woods?" Does a bear defecate in a silver environment? They'll look at you as if you're from outer space or something like that.
Well, they'll just think you're a jerk for not answering their question.
Yeah, but you're not a jerk. You're answering their question, but in a more sophisticated way.
Now, you're not Socrates, so you don't have to answer every question with a question.
This is true. This is true. But why do attorneys always speak in legalese?
That just happens. It's much more clear and articulate to be able to speak your point.
Is that what you're trained for? Is that what
No,
they
they don't
teach you?
train us to do
Is
that.
that what they teach you in lawyer college or what?
They teach you almost nothing in lawyer college.
All right. Well, I'm not going to hammer you anymore. That's maybe another time. I'll get you. All right, Noah, let it rip.
All right. Well, I guess that's probably going to wrap us up for this week, John. Thank you all for joining us this week on Card Shop Insiders. We're grateful for everybody that's been listening to the podcast. We are working on a couple of hiccups that we found out about connections to Apple Podcasts, but we are attempting to make sure that this is available on every platform. If you come up with a platform that you think we should be added to or that you have noticed that we're not on, please feel free to let us know. The most effective way, I think, to get us a comment right now is either to sign up for Patreon, which you do not have to do, or for free, you can go to YouTube, find our latest episodes, and leave a comment there, which we'll be able to review and get your information. You can also follow us on Instagram and X, where you can send us a direct message. And if you'd like to interact with the show in any other way that you can think of that's reasonable and feasible, please feel free to do so. Finally, if you are able and willing, we do have the Patreon set up. We have some cool options that we're working on. We really appreciate, again, our first Patreon, Ben, for joining us on that platform and for giving us his feedback and giving us an opportunity to work with him to make that a place where we can really give value to listeners and people that want to learn more about how to run a shop. So thank you again, and we'll see you guys next time from Behind the Counter.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you listening also. Have a good day.